In today's episode, we're diving into one of the biggest lies of the fitness and fat loss industry. It's the quick fix. If you ever cut out carbs, drastically reduced your calories, juice fasted, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's the truth. These quick fixes aren't just failing you and leading to short-term weight loss success. They're damaging you and ruining your life. They mess with your body, your confidence, your self-esteem, your family, your social life, and your job. You don't need another diet. You need a solution that lasts. So if you feel like you've tried every diet out there, but you're still struggling with your weight, make sure you listen to this episode. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Never Diet Again podcast. I'm Max Lowery, weight loss coach, author, and behavioral change expert. And in the last 10 years, I've helped thousands of people not just lose weight, but keep it off for their entire lives. I'm joined by one of our coaches on the Live 360 program, Mollie. Mollie, who are you?
Hi, I'm Molly. It's great to be here. I'm actually in quite a unique position where I was a previous client of the Live 360 program. So I really understand the unique challenges that all of our women on the program are going through. I specialize mainly in women's health and I work alongside Max and Shane to guide our clients on the physical and psychological barriers and help them really achieve that lasting foundation and change.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. So, today we're going to talk about quick fixes. And I realize that many of you listening to this and many women out there who are trying to lose weight are actively looking for quick fixes. And I want to use this episode to talk about the damage that quick fixes actually do to your body, your happiness, your life, your relationship with food, your social life, your identity, your self-belief, your self-esteem, everything. Because it can sometimes seem like there's no other option, but there are other options. And it can seem familiar to go down this route of quick fixes because that's all you ever know, and you maybe don't want to commit to anything going any deeper than just surface level problems. But we're going to use this episode to hopefully show you why it's doing more harm than good. Let's firstly talk about some typical quick fixes that people do. So obviously we've got the popular diets like Fast 800, keto is a big one. Cut out carbohydrates, and yeah, people get quick weight loss results. Juice fasting, lighter life, slimming world, I would even, and these slimming clubs, I would argue, are quick fixes as well, because again, they're just addressing the surface level issues. They're not going any deeper and understanding what's the root cause of the problem. And obviously, they are attractive because you don't have to do it for very long and you get a quick result. So you get that kind of quick dopamine hit from the number on the scale moving, you lose weight, and then you return back to your usual behavior. And the weight might stay off for weeks or months, but it will always come back on. And this is when you end up in this kind of yo-yo dieting cycle, which we talk about a lot on this podcast. Molly, have you done any of these quick fixes?
I was just about to say that. Well, first, I came across a diet last week called the Commando diet. I don't know if you've heard of this one, but it's
No.
the first day is 9 eggs. So all you consume is
Okay.
9 eggs in the first day. And then it goes on to a grapefruit and an egg, and then essentially kind of protein and a bit of veg. So I was quite shocked when I saw that. But yeah, I mean, there's so many of them out there. I think a quick fix I've definitely been through is, before holiday, you always just think, oh, I want to, lose a little bit of weight and just have this extreme diet mindset before holiday. That's usually when I tend to turn to them, but always put the weight back on holiday or when I'm back.
Yeah, it's holidays, it's January, it's weddings, it's work events. You ignore the problem most of the time, and then something gives you motivation in that moment to lose the weight, so you turn towards something quick and easy. I personally haven't done any quick fixes. I kind of got into I was working in finance, and then towards the end of like 3 or 4 years in finance and not doing any exercise, I was beginning to put on a bit of weight. And then at that kind of very moment, I did quit and went traveling around South America, which is where I discovered intermittent fasting, which for some people can be a quick fix if it's done incorrectly. But if done correctly, I've now done it for 12, 13 years. It can become a sustainable way of life. But yeah, all our clients come to us from a place of they've done every quick fix out there. They've lost weight, put it back on, lost weight, put it back on, lost weight, put it back on. And they realize that something different needs to be done. But the issue is they don't know what. They don't know what else to do. And fortunately, some of them come across my social media and then they start to realize, oh, maybe there is a different way to do this. Um, but let's talk about why quick fixes don't last. So they only address the surface level issues. So obviously, if you want to lose weight, you need to create a calorie deficit, which we talked quite a lot about on last week's podcast episode. And obviously, the only two ways that you can create a calorie deficit is to manipulate the food that you're eating, so eating a bit less, and to move a bit more. And when you manipulate those two things, you will get weight loss results if you create a calorie deficit. And that's essentially how all these diets work. So whether it's intermittent fasting, you're making it harder to eat calories and consume calories. You're restricting the time in which you can eat calories. So obviously it's making eating less easier. You got keto, you're cutting out an entire food group, carbohydrates, which makes it easier to eat in a calorie deficit. Fast 800, obviously you're only eating 800 calories, so you're going to be in a big deficit. Juice fasting, whatever it is. All these quick fixes create a calorie deficit in some way, shape, or form. But what they don't do is address the underlying reasons on why you are overeating in the first place, on why you lack motivation, on why you lack self-belief, why you aren't prioritizing yourself, why you turn to food in times of stress and negative emotion. And those are the real reasons why you are overweight. And if you don't address those things, then the weight is always going to come back on. When you have the motivation to lose the weight for the holiday, you'll do it, you'll lose the weight, but then you get back from holiday, you revert back to your resisting behavior, which could be emotional eating and lack of prioritization and all this kind of stuff. And then obviously the weight comes back on.
Or you go
Um,
on holiday and just think, I've done it now, so let's just go crazy.
yeah, well, you just go all in on the holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's a very emotionally draining cycle to
Mm.
be in. And I think um, what it leads to, it can really impact your relationship with food. Because if you do a diet like keto, I don't know if you've ever done keto, Molly. I have, and I got into keto probably right at the beginning of when I became a personal trainer. I think I got into keto first before getting to intermittent fasting. Actually, so I'm a lie. That's a lie. Actually, I have done something a quick fix thing, but it wasn't necessarily for weight loss. I kind of got bought into like the whole, you don't need carbohydrates and all this rubbish. Um, and for a period of time, I remember I haven't really done any yo-yo diets. All right, I had a pretty good relationship with food. I hadn't really struggled with my weight. And after like 6 months to a year of keto, I really started to demonize carbohydrates. I started to feel guilty for eating them. And not only that, I made everyone else around me feel guilty for eating them. So my now wife, at the time, had a pretty hard time. My dad was also into it as well. But yeah, anyone was eating carbohydrates around me, I would really feel demonized, and I would feel guilty myself. And it actually took quite a long time to get out of that. And remember, I'm someone who hasn't struggled with their weight or doesn't have a complicated relationship with food, and it still impacted me. So if you have already had a lifetime of dieting and struggle to lose weight, doing something like keto or any of these restrictive diets is going to further add fuel to the fire and really demonize certain foods and keep you stuck in this constant cycle of being good and then being bad. And when you're being bad, you're feeling guilty and hating yourself. Did you ever try keto at all?
I know I've always had quite a good relationship with food. Um, I've been quite fortunate with that. And I think just hearing what you're saying about actually losing weight, it's being in a calorie deficit, but that can also be through movement. And I think even some of these quick fixes really hone into the food element, and it creates this perception that the only way that you can lose weight is restricting your food. And obviously, something that we really focus on within the project is the movement, which opens up opportunities for people to walk with friends and get outdoors. And I think even with these quick fixes, it really seems to be about the food they're consuming, not even the other element of the calorie deficit, which is also how much you're moving.
Yeah, for sure. I think, ideally, like I said earlier, you can manipulate one or the other, but actually the ideal situation is you do both at the same time. You eat a bit less and you move a bit more. But I think again, actually, if people are focusing on the exercise, they're doing way too much. They're going like, "Oh, I'm going to do 7 hit sessions a week." Especially in January, you'll get all the gyms being like 7 workouts, or workout every day for 30 days, and all this kind of stuff, which just becomes completely unsustainable and unenjoyable. So these quick fixes really impact your relationship with food. Um, they are unenjoyable and they are unsustainable. So even if you did have the motivation to carry on and you're really, let's say hypothetically, your motivation levels didn't decrease at all, ever. They were just always there and you're always motivated to lose this weight. Even with high levels of motivation, you're not going to be able to keep up this level of restriction and deprivation. It's just unsustainable and unenjoyable. It's not possible. And it leads to being stuck in the diet cycle, which I'll explain very quickly. So the diet cycle starts with, you're unhappy with your situation. You want to lose some weight. So you Google or research or scroll on Instagram different ways to lose weight. And let's say you're like, oh, okay, keto. I'm going to try keto. So cut out carbohydrates, which goes well for maybe a week or two. But after a week or two, you start to feel restricted and deprived. And maybe you are able to push through those feelings of restriction and deprivation for a period of time, but eventually you're going to give in. Not only are you going to give in, you're going to binge and overeat on the foods that you've been restricting yourself from. You're going to not be able to regulate yourself at all. And guess what? That's going to lead to feelings of guilt, shame, stress, anxiety. I failed again. And that feeds a belief that you are someone that fundamentally can't succeed at weight loss. Then you'll stop the weight, you'll end up overweight again. You'll forget about it for a period of time. And then January comes up, the wedding comes up, the holiday comes up, and then you're looking for the next diet. And that can go on for people's entire lives, women's entire lives. We've had clients who are in their 60s and they've been in this cycle since they were teenagers. So, like, 40, 50 years. And the longer it goes on, the worse it gets. And I think one of the biggest issues with this is that the more you fail at weight loss, the more you develop an identity of failure. You just become someone that cannot succeed at weight loss. And once you start to believe that about yourself, and this is on quite a fundamental, subconscious, deep core belief level, once you believe that about yourself, then it's almost impossible to actually lose the weight and keep it off. We've talked about identity a lot on this podcast, but shifting your identity into someone that can not only lose weight, but becoming someone that enjoys prioritizing themselves, enjoys eating healthy food, enjoys being active is a fundamental part of how we help our clients. You have to shift your identity and rid yourself of the old version of yourself. Was that something that you were surprised by when you joined the Live 360 program, Molly, at the start? Shifting the identity?
Yeah, and I think it was something more that I'd never thought of. And I, even from a female perspective, there's so much online around not being able to lose weight because of hormones or menopause. And I personally struggle with PCOS. And I remember my identity very much becoming driven by PCOS and not being able to make any changes
Mm.
because it was told to me that it wasn't possible. And little did I realize that reinforcement was impacting my behaviors. But even just belief, what's the point in putting all of this effort to changing my habits and, getting out and getting steps in if it's not possible? And that shift for me, just believing that it is possible, was probably one of the biggest changes that helped me on the program.
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, it sounds like in some ways you became a victim of your PCOS. You're like, well, I've got PCOS, so therefore it's not possible. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same with with a lot of the clients who have tried and failed so many times. it's my genetics, it's my metabolism, it's the menopause, it's the hormones. And don't get me wrong, those things do factor in. You do have to take those things into consideration, of course. But what we see is actually the things we're talking about in this conversation are actually more powerful. So what you think, what you believe about yourself and the world around you, your reactions, your emotions that impact your behavior and your relationship with food have a much bigger impact than your genetics, your metabolism, or your hormones. Um, I think once you develop that identity of failure and someone that cannot lose weight, there can also be a very loud, critical inner voice that creeps in as well, where every time that you fail, every time the weight comes back on, you are really mean and critical to yourself within, inside your own head. And this is a big problem that we help our clients with, is distancing themselves from that critical inner voice, because that critical inner voice leads to a cycle of more stress, more shame, more guilt, more anxiety, which can end up with more alcohol consumption, more food consumption, emotional eating, stress eating, and it just becomes this negative feedback loop and this vicious cycle of failure. And this can really ruin your life. We work with driven, successful, motivated women. They have great careers. A lot of them have got great families, but they cannot succeed at weight loss. And the longer it goes on, initially it's just an isolated failure, but that failure, especially when you kind of combine it with the perimenopause and the menopause and the hormonal changes, that feeling of failure starts with just your weight, but it permeates into lots of different areas of their lives, their relationships, their social life, and they are hiding in work situations. They're not asking for the promotions. They don't want to be seen. They want to be hidden, and it causes a lot of problems. So it's really important. I want to get across in this podcast that I know you want a quick fix. This is what you want, but there isn't any quick fix to this problem, unfortunately. It just doesn't exist. You can't wave a magic wand. You can't just cut out a food group and hope for the best. You must address the root causes of the problem. And I get it. Some of you may not be ready to do that. That's absolutely fine. That's what this podcast is for, ultimately, is to give you tips and advice from within our program and hopefully get you to realize that actually the only way out of this is to get support and accountability from experts. But whilst you're looking for quick fixes, you're just going to be making the whole situation worse. And I think this time of year, it's the 13th of November recording this. We're getting into December and January. And what most people are going to be doing is getting closer and closer towards December. And they're going to be saying, well, it's December now. There's no possible control I can have over December. So I'm just going to chuck it in the fuck it bucket, which is what we say. There's no, December's a write-off. I can't possibly have any control over what I'm doing in December. So I'm just going to completely ignore it. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to enjoy myself, and I'm going to start and do a quick fix in January. So January comes, you're probably 5-10 pounds heavier than you were before. And then you go for the quick fix. And then obviously, maybe lose some weight for a period of time, but after 30 days, you realize it's unsustainable. You give up, the motivation disappears, the weight comes back on, and then basically you're waiting until next January to start again. Unfortunately,
would you, and if they said, but why is now a great time to start?
Yeah, to be honest, I would say that this time of year is the best time to start, because basically we're going to be helping all our clients to enjoy Christmas. Listening to this right now, you're probably thinking, there's no way I'm going to start like a diet now and try and lose weight in Christmas because I'm not going to enjoy Christmas. I'm here to tell you that all our clients will be going to all the social occasions that they want to go to. They'll be having the drink, eating the food. They'll probably be overindulging a bit on Christmas Day and feeling a bit full and a bit uncomfortable, but they're still going to lose weight at the end of the month, most of them, which probably sounds completely untrue. It sounds too good to be true, but it isn't. It is true. It is possible to lose the weight and enjoy yourself. And the only way that you're going to learn to keep the weight off in the long term is if you learn how to do that. Is if you learn how to manage your weight and lose weight when things are difficult. And it's not only that, it's not just the social occasions and the food. It's dark outside. It's cold, especially in in England. Sorry to say, from the south of France where I am.
Yes.
Um, and so everything is harder. Everything is harder. So the better, if you're able to have support and accountability in November and December before January, you're setting yourself up for a massive win. You're starting January already made a load of progress, already with the hitting the ground running and being full of confidence that you can do this. And I would say that we're still working with some of our clients who joined kind of November, December last year. They have got incredible results. They have and I've seen this like over my 10-year period, people who do start now end up getting better results in the long term because they've started something in non-ideal conditions. So we've spoken about how quick fixes and repeated quick fixes can damage your self-belief, your identity, your relationship with food. But what does it do to your body, your metabolism? When you go through repeated attempts to lose weight, when you're really creating a massive calorie deficit by only eating 800 calories or 1200 calories or cutting out carbohydrates, as a woman, unfortunately women are more um, sensitive to stress on the body, mainly because of reproduction. So the the classic thing to happen if a woman is adding too much physical stress on her is to miss periods. Um, so adding this extra stress on you can not only mess with your cycles, your hormones, but also your metabolism. Because when you drastically reduce your calories, you do, and your body reacts in a way thinking, right, I'm not getting as much food as I need. So I'm going to slow down processes within the body so that I can function on less food. So it decreases what's called known as your basal metabolic rate, which on the whole you have very little control over, but it leads to 70% of your daily calorie burn. So 70% of the calories that you burn every day are from your basal metabolic rate. So you want to do everything you possibly can to keep that as high as possible because it gives you so much more freedom to eat more food. So if you go through an attempt, like if you shock your body and cut out carbohydrates or only eat 800 calories, or basically try and starve yourself, your body's going to react by decreasing the basal metabolic rate, which means it's slowing everything down. And to continue to get weight loss, you're going to have to eat less and less and less and less, basically. So it not only does it decrease your basal metabolic rate, so you have to eat less to continue to get a weight loss result, it's also going to try and get you back to the weight that you were if you have lost any weight. It's going to increase your hunger hormones. So it's like a double whammy effect of metabolism decreasing and hunger hormones increasing because it wants to bring you back to homeostasis. It wants to bring you back to where it was before. Because really, unfortunately, our bodies, well, fortunately and unfortunately, fortunately, our bodies have evolved this capacity to store body fat in times of famine and starvation and harsh times. Like we wouldn't have got to this stage in human evolution if we didn't have that capacity. So really, it sees any weight loss as a bad thing. Even if you're 100 kilos overweight and you're about to die because you're going to have a heart attack, it still doesn't see losing any of that weight as a good thing because ultimately that body fat is stored energy and it's increasing your chance of survival. So, but obviously now we live in a completely different world. Many of us who are fortunate to live in, the Western world who aren't starving, but there's an abundance of food. The environment has completely changed. So anytime that you go through a period of extreme restriction, it's not thinking, oh, it doesn't matter. This person's just trying to lose weight, and there's plenty of food around. It's thinking, oh my god, there's no food around. I need to slow down processes so that I don't die. So you repeatedly do this, and you can end up messing around with your metabolism. Does that mean that you've got a broken metabolism and it's never going to reset, and you've messed yourself up for life? No, it will gradually go back to normal when you start eating normally and start moving properly. But in the short term, it can cause a lot of problems. And it's the reason why when you do a diet, you end up heavier than you were at the start because it takes a while for your metabolism to catch up. So this is known as like the rebound effect. There's so many studies into this. There's meta-analysis of studies where I think within 5 years, 80% of people end up putting the weight back on and more after dieting. So you're putting a lot of stress on the body, which is going to cause a lot of problems, especially for a woman. Men can probably withstand that a bit more, but it's still going to cause problems. You can end up losing your libido, and the first thing to go is reproductive um, function, basically, because that is reproductive function isn't essential to survival. So that's the first thing that's going to go, and then it will start to um, affect other things.
Max, do you think, and maybe you've seen it with some of our clients, uh, when people move to a quick fix or have previously, had a quick fix, how it impacts their social life or their family life? Because I'm just thinking, at least phases where I've been slightly restrictive, that it's caused me not to go to social events. It's made me a little bit
Mhm.
more nervous around engaging with my family and wanting that control on what's going to be consumed. So, do you see anything in terms of people's restriction, not just what they're eating, but how they're interacting with people when they've previously had a quick fix?
Yeah, for sure. You do become antisocial. You're avoiding the social situations. You're avoiding going out for family meals, avoiding all sorts of things. And then maybe I think what's even worse for mums especially is they're cooking something on the side. It's completely separate to what the rest of the family are eating. And often, you know, they end up having to spend way more time cooking because they're cooking two different things because they're on a diet. And not only is that incredibly antisocial to, and inefficient, it takes way more time than it needs to just to eat a meal. But what kind of example is that setting for your children? You know, oh, mummy, why are you eating that diet food? And the reaction could be, well, mummy's trying to lose weight. I can't eat that food. What does that mean for your children? And I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty here or point fingers. I know you're all trying to do your best, but I think it's really important to understand how your actions can impact your entire family. And I would say like 90% of the clients that we work with can trace their own complicated relationship with food back to their own mums. So every generation of women for the last 100 years has had a ton of pressure from society to lose weight. And there's been different um, versions of diet culture. And just even if they haven't, so some of our clients have had their mums put them on diets, so put their daughters on diets from a very, very young age, which obviously is incredibly detrimental. They mean well. This is coming from a place of love, but it's leading to a lifetime of issues. But even if they don't actively put them on a diet or say anything about weight, and this is something I hear a lot on calls is, oh, I'm really careful not to say anything in front of my children, which is great. Like, I'm not discounting that. But anyone who's got children knows that actions speak louder than words. So if you are the clients we've had, they've had mums who've just dieted. They're always on another diet. They're always feeling guilty about eating certain foods, being antisocial, uh, not having anything to wear. It normalizes certain behavior. It normalizes diet culture. And the more that you normalize that, the more that kind of behavior is normal, the more likely your children are to adopt those kinds of behaviors, especially young girls, unfortunately, because of the societal pressure. And, on the flip side, I came from a family where my dad, he jumps out of planes. He's done 1,500 skydives. He cycled, he did all sorts of crazy active stuff, still does at the age of 63. So that kind of behavior is normalized for me. And that's why ultimately I am who I am, because I've grown up where that behavior is normal. So that's what I do. So it's really, it's really important to create an environment at home where you're leading by example and normalizing the behaviors that you want your children to follow. Um, and you don't want to be that person who all your friends are expecting you to be on another diet, are kind of it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways where you believe this about yourself, but then all your friends also believe, oh, you're on another diet, are you? And it just becomes a massive problem. So it impacts your social life, it impacts your physiology, your metabolism, it impacts your mindset, your self-belief, your relationship with food, and it impacts your identity, who you believe about yourself. And once that happens, it's not impossible to get out of, but it is very hard. But fortunately, that's what we specialize in.
Also really overwhelming, and I think that's something that clients come to us, especially at the beginning, that they've spent years and years thinking about the next quick fix that they can do, thinking about why the previous one didn't work, thinking about all of the things that they felt that they've done wrong. And I think this is the reason why we do it differently, is because all of that constant cycle and failure and trying again is just taking up so much time and energy in clients' minds. And, and they have these jobs and ambitions and families to think about. So much of their mind is consumed with, losing weight. And it
Mhm.
really, prevents them moving forward in all different areas of their life.
100%. So the question I
Mm.
usually ask on the conversations I have with potential clients is, what percent, and anyone listening to this, go through this exercise. Let's say you wake up in the morning and you start at 0, right? So you've got like lots of capacity for the day, emotional energy, all this kind of stuff. And then over the course of the day, your job takes some, your children take some, life takes some, your commute, whatever it is. How many points, what percentage points is being consumed by weight loss and guilt and shame and food and all this kind of stuff? And a lot of the clients we work with, when I ask them this question, they have to think about it and they realize it's like 40, 50%, sometimes more. So let's say it is 50%. So 50% of your daily thinking and energy, I'm not talking about like 50% of your day in terms of time. I'm talking about like the energy that you have throughout the day is being consumed by certain things and weight loss. So let's say it is 50%. That means you've only got 50% left for your family and your job and the things that actually matter. So let's say you've got 20% for your job and you got like 30% for your family. Are you happy only giving 30% to your family? Are you happy only giving 20% to your job? And the problem is, listening to this, you probably don't even realize it's just become normalized. This is normal for you to obsess and stress over this. But I'm telling you, both of us are telling you right here, right now, it's not normal. It's ruining your life. It's a waste of life. It's a waste of time. It's impacting not just you, it's impacting your entire family. Um, and it doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't. It really doesn't. There is a way out of this. But it's going to take something completely different to what you've done before. It's not going to take a quick fix, which I know can be really daunting. It can be really scary to commit and to do something different and to have help and support from experts. But what's more scary is it staying in this situation now. And let's be real with what that means. If you stay the same, if nothing changes, you don't stay the same, all right? It gets worse. Nothing ever stays the same. So if nothing changes, the situation gets worse. You continue to put weight on, and the psychological toll, everything we've spoken about on this call, it gets worse. So if you're in your 40s or 50s right now, you've maybe got another 30, 40 years of hating your life to a certain respect, obsessing about this, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and especially with the changes of the hormones. So what's more scary? Is it that, the prospect of things getting worse and you hating your life, or is it doing something different and getting the support and accountability that you deserve from experts who truly understand your situation and you as an individual? Which is more scary? I'll let you decide. So let's wrap up. Hopefully this has been useful. Hopefully this has been powerful. If you do want to start now and get our support, the best way to do that is to click the link below and book in for a quick chat with one of the team. This is just a 10-minute conversation. Okay. So this is just to get an idea of why you're struggling and if we can help. That's the only thing that's going to happen on this call, right? We're not going to be selling you anything. We're not going to be doing anything or offering you anything on the coaching program. It's just to see if we can help. It's really relaxed conversation. We are nice people. We've been doing this for a very long time. So that's the quickest way that you can kind of get started. Or you can click below and have access to a masterclass, which goes into a lot of detail about exactly how we help our clients, and it summarizes our 3-step system. All right. So those are probably the best 2 ways that you can um, get in touch and start this process. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please hit like or review or follow if you want, or subscribe. If this is on Spotify, then hit subscribe. That is the best way to help us grow the podcast. But even better, if you feel like you've got a friend that needs to hear this, if you've got a family member that needs to hear this message, then share it with them. Because whenever you share, the algorithms, the magic stuff, the algorithms is gonna think, "Okay, this podcast is obviously adding value because people are sharing it." So it's gonna be really helpful way, of growing, the podcast and letting the algorithms know that we're creating good content. All right. So yeah, thanks very much, Molly, for joining. We'll be here same time next week. Thanks for listening, everyone, and see you then.
Thanks, everyone.